Hello, welcome to another CameraPro on the couch, supported by Canon. My name is Gabriel, and I will be interviewing tonight Aidan Williams. He's an adventure photographer and has won many prizes, including he has been featured on National Geographic, and he mainly shoots slackline on Highline, which is pretty amazing, and he has some pretty amazing work to share with us tonight. Let's welcome Aidan.
Hey, Gabriel, how's it going? It's a pleasure to be here.
Good. I'm pretty good. I'm glad that you're here, and I'm happy that we're gonna have a pretty interesting conversation tonight. Let's kick off with a little bit of an introduction about yourself. How do you start? When do you start with photography? And yeah, let us know a little bit about your journey, how it began.
Yeah, it's been a big journey so far. Like I'm 26 years of age, but when I was 19 years of age, I became professional. Right after school, I started studying just through TAFE and everything like that. It ignited that love for me, and it kind of gave me that belief that it's what I wanted to do with my life. I love photography and I love sport. So I kind of got to the stage where I thought, why not combine both together and pursue that? So right after studying, or right when I was studying, sorry, I started doing all the cadetships, everything like that in press photography, trying to get a bit of a name for myself, trying to get experience, a bit of an in. And it kind of more so than ever just cemented that I wanted to go into sport. So I end up going kind of away from the press side of things and just honing in on the sport. And that kind of took me into the adventure realm where I've been there ever since. And, you know, I've fallen in love with that side of things. And yeah, I've never looked back.
That's amazing. In relation to when you started, because you said 19, you were already a professional, right? So you're already making a career out of it. Even before that, when was the first time that you grabbed a camera, and what kind of camera did you start playing with, and what kind of things were you shooting back then that made you like the love for photography to come out on you and make you decide to go for that?
Yeah, well, it's kind of like I didn't think much of it at the time. But when I was 5 years of age, you start shooting with disposable cameras. You go away with family on camping trips, and then you start bringing them along to school camps. You got your classic, 27 shots or anything like that to use up.
Yeah.
But when I was 7 years of age, my parents must have seen something, so they gave me a small little point and shoot. I think it was about a 20 times zoom at the time. Nothing fancy,
right.
but
pretty good for the time.
Yeah, I was just shooting with that from the age of 7, and there was nothing in particular that I was shooting because I was kind of a bit starstruck at the time. I just wanted to shoot anything and everything from my back garden to my brother playing sport. He's 3 years older than me, but right through until I was kind of 16 years of age. I was still taking photos, nothing major, but looking back in hindsight, it was all about movement, sport, and like you're in a beautiful landscape. Like I've grown up in the Blue Mountains, so you've got a pretty amazing canvas around here. So
yeah, I would imagine it's like probably I think every single day must be kind of different from each other over there in terms of landscape scenery as
absolutely.
well.
Absolutely. And nothing gets boring. So there's always something new. There's a new trail, there's a new lookout. And especially with sport as well, there's plenty of locations and plenty of sports to shoot.
There's a bit of climbing over there as well in Blue Mountains as well, right? So I'm pretty sure you probably came across a few rock climbers there. You said that you did some studies. I was gonna ask you, how did you get good at photography? Because a lot of people think it's just talent, like natural talent, but photography is very technical, and we need to learn that technicality somewhere. So did you self-taught yourself a bit, and then you went into school, or you just went straight into like a course? And yeah, tell us a little bit about that process.
Well, it's an interesting one because when I was shooting all the way through school and everything like that, I wasn't taking it very seriously. And then it kind of coincided at a really good time that I was doing my HSC, and
Mm-hmm.
art was one of my favorite subjects. So I was like, well, I could do photography as a major. So right at that time, we got a photography teacher come in. She was our visual arts teacher, and I was like, oh, okay. I just fell in love with that idea, and I just picked her brains. I was that ultimate pest, just wanting to learn everything that I could, because I was like, well, this is, you know, someone that's doing what I want to do.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, like you know, looking back now, it's kind of cringy how little I knew, but like in the technical side of things, but I just had a really good eye for things. I kind of, you know, I didn't know how to technically explain it, but I could line things up and compose things really well. But that's where things really kind of start to escalate as well, where I'd finished high school and I started my study at TAFE. So that really honed in those technical aspects, and I had the eye, and now I could put the technicalities together. And yeah, it really started to progress from there.
Awesome. And just to some of our listeners out there, what course did you actually do at TAFE? What was the name of the course?
Yeah, so I did a diploma of photo imaging. So you can do like a Cert 4 now, a diploma, but
Mm-hmm.
that ultimately gives you the foundation skills in photography, business, kind of marketing, all the things you need. It's not just, you know, shooting. So yeah.
Yeah, I've actually did that course too. And yeah, the infrastructure that they offer you, it's actually pretty sweet. So if you have the guns for it and you want to chase it, they give you quite a nice support there. And all right, so after that, you finished your studies, and that's like when you jumped into the press part of it. And that's basically how you manage to go from making photos of your own enjoyment to profession, or you have something else in between that you could say that it was your move to the professional, to the career part of it.
Well, it's kind of like as soon as I started studying at TAFE, because it was a 2-year course at the time, I all I wanted to do was progress as fast as I could, get the experience, and the only way that I could get the experience was putting myself out there and getting these cadetships through the major newspapers like the Sydney Morning Herald, the Daily Telegraph, and then ultimately like Getty Images, which is like a stock agency, like an agency. My apologies. So all the way through studying, I was trying to get experience, but it was as soon as I'd kind of finished, I was starting to land jobs, whether that be through press and sports. So it kind of came as a really good time, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, I always wanted more. So, you know, as soon as I started working the professional element, I realized that, you know, maybe working in press and sport and everything like that together wasn't necessarily going to be a long-term option for me, because I wanted to feel refreshed, excited, doing what my idols were doing, you know, just the classic.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
yeah, I kind of got to a stage in that world where I thought, wow, like is this what it's going to be for the next 30, 40 years of my career, where, you know, I'm a bit burnt out, you know, I'm not super excited. I need something new. So I then ultimately decided to chase more the adventure side of things. So.
And when you decided to do that chase, how did you put yourself out there for it? How you started actually talking to people, messaging people, or you just went with your friends and then you started shooting that, and that's where it kind of came out together? How was that little process there?
Well, it's not a standard style of story. It's kind of things reached a dead end, and I just had to create something new. So while I was working at the Daily Telegraph, I just kind of got to a stage where I was like, I just need a break. So I took 2 weeks to just road trip down in Tasmania. I thought, I haven't really done too much overseas. What's the most, you know, adventurous place I can
Overseas.
go?
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I was like, what's the most adventurous place I can go that's nearby and, you know, within a kind of 2-hour radius, like on a flight? So I thought, let's just get kind of a swag and a car and just road trip around Tasmania. So I went down there for 2 weeks, just camping, loving nature. And on one of the last days that I was there, one of my idols, Krista Wright, I saw that she was in Tasmania. I was just like, what is she doing? You know, she's where I am.
Mm.
And eventually she said to me, she's like, oh, I'm on this project. I'm photographing highlining. I was like, highlining? Like, what's that? You know, fresh eyes, just wanting to, I was just open to anything new and exciting. So I thought, well, if my idol is doing this, like, it must be good. So, you know, I wanted to go out with her on this project, but, you know, it was obviously like a few day hike in. Um, but I went back home and all that was in my mind was highlining, highlining. What is highlining? So I came back home, did my research, and was looking everywhere over the internet. And at the time, it was very new to Australia. So I had to dig deep, and eventually I came across a guy that was doing it in the Blue Mountains. And I was like, this is my outlet. This is where I want to go. So I was the ultimate pest. I think I was pestering him for about a month long, like just Instagram messages, everything like that. Like, man, like, you don't know who I am. I don't know who you are, but you're doing what I want to do. You know, like
Awesome.
so eventually he kind of let me come out with him, and it was like a Friday afternoon, like after sunset, like horrible shooting conditions, horrible. Uh, but, you know, I just fell in love. You know, this person suspended over thin air, like 1 inch above flying pretty much. And
Yep.
I was just hooked. So, you know, I was talking to the guys and almost just wanting more and more. It's just that addiction. And because this is what I hoped I'd find in kind of press, and I hadn't really found it yet. And
Mm.
one of the guys said to me, he goes, photographers don't last with us. I was like, what do you mean? Like, that's such a horrible thing for someone to say to a
Yeah.
new person, you know, who's fallen in love with this. But and then he kind of paused and he kind of looked at me and he went, but do you want to spend the weekend with us? And I was like, okay, yeah,
Oh,
yeah. So it was kind of that moment where things just switched in my mind. I was like, no, this is where I want to go. So from there, I just couldn't get enough of it.
I guess I kind of get it why he said that. It's like if they have the same culture as climbers do, it's pretty rough because it's not only about camping, but they put themselves out in the elements quite a bit. And I guess that's what it's harder to stick to. You need to be really willing to stay out in the element, in nature, raining or not raining, cold or not cold. And I guess you got that grit, you got that with you, right? Like you already, like before even getting to Highline, were you already very into camping and outdoors since ever, or is something that you end up accruing with time when you started shooting Highline?
So it's like I was always camping from it as like a young age with my family, like we're traveling, everything like that. But yeah, I'm kind of ashamed that, you know, like I grew up in the Blue Mountains, and yet I had this like kind of this blind eye to the rock climbing, the high lining, you know, the ultra trail running, all these adventure sports like mountain bike riding. Like I just wasn't
Mm.
really exposed to that side of things because I grew up with traditional sports like your soccer, your cricket, your rugby league, that sort of thing. And yeah, I kind of had to develop that or had to develop that side of things. But it
Mm-hmm.
also, like, because I was so enthusiastic about it, I think that's what, you know, got me in with a lot of these athletes because, you know, yes, I hadn't grown up and, you know, like with that side of things, and that, you know, they hadn't seen me do it, but, you know, I wanted it that badly and I was prepared to do anything to make it happen. So ultimately, like with rock climbing with you, that, you know, it comes down to trust. You know, if they trust you and they want you there, then you're going to be part of this small team that makes this project happen. So yeah, that's kind of what got me over the line, even though I didn't have that experience. So yeah.
Yep. Awesome. That's cool, man. And it's a very good experience to have as well, like with being out in nature, camping, and doing all of that. I will ask you though, like, so since after you moved from the press thing, and you got more into the sports and into the adventure, um, I was gonna ask you, what are your clients now? Now that you're a professional in that area, who are your clients? Are you working with publications or brands, or is actually straight through with the athletes, or you do a bit of each one of those things?
So things have definitely progressed. When I first started, that it was pretty much, like a lot of self-funding these trips to put myself in positions where, and that comes down to a lot of confidence in yourself that, you're going to pay for yourself to be in a place, to put yourself on this project so that then you can be successful. So, like if that doesn't go right, then, like it's not great, but, you need to put yourself out there to make these things happen. So it's definitely progressed a lot, where at the start of things, it was just with publications, that sort of thing, where you do things technically like on spec, where you shoot a project and then you sell the work, like whether that be, a particular beautiful project, or whether that be an Australian or world record, those sort of things, which are, they're newsworthy around the world, to progressing where, whether that be a sponsor, it's not really an athlete, but mainly a sponsor that can be of an athlete, or the project as a whole will go, we need to have Aidan on this project. Let's bring him here because,
in relation to the publications, because it seemed like it was the first step before you actually get into athletes and sponsors. How do you go about selling those publications, and who do you approach to sell it to? Is that the athlete that you photographed, or is that a magazine that is related to Highline, or what is your approach there?
So there's not too many magazines that are related to highlining, because it's still like pretty new in the scheme of things. But there is a lot of adventure magazines. So it started out just with mainstream press, whether that be from a newspaper, like back home in Australia, or whether that be where we've set the world record, or whether that be where the athlete's from as well. So you kind of got your targets. But then you've got the next step where, you will target certain magazines, because you go, this is a big event, this is an amazing project. So you will target your massive magazines, like your Nat Geos, those sort of things. So, or your Outlooks, those things. So, yeah.
Awesome. Like now, let's move on a little bit apart from that and go into the athlete side of it. So after you went to publications, and that was already kind of, I would say, like, it became a bread and butter for you, or it became easier to get them, and then you moved into the athlete side of it. Do you get many jobs straight out of the athlete wanting to work with you? Or how is the relationship between you and the athletes?
So I feel like I'm going to say there's a lot throughout this, but there's kind of this progression. So initially, when you're first starting, it's definitely not a bread and butter sort of thing. Like, you need to take your hits, and you're trying to make a name for yourself, and with these athletes as well, so that you can become like, you're more reliable to them. You therefore get onto bigger projects. You're trying to get a name for yourself within the sport, so that you do have the trust, so that you can execute these high stakes projects as well. So I think that's first and foremost. But then you do have, I think I'm just trying to, then afterwards, like, as things do progress, and you will be collaborating with the athlete as well. So you will say, hey, because the last thing you want as well is something negative to come of it. So you're always targeting positive publications as such. So you will be collaborating with them, and then you'll have an idea where you'll put these out as well, and what you'll write. So that forced me into also starting to write articles as well, so that you're producing a package. Therefore, you have control over the whole production, pretty much. So
awesome. We have actually a question here from the audience that I think it blends very well with what you're talking about right now. It's how important is the community aspect of the adventure community, I guess, like how important it is to be like very close to it to be able to get that work, right?
It's massive. It's massive, the community aspect, because it's pretty much like whether that be in rock climbing or highlining or any adventure sport, it's like a family. So
Mm,
everyone's the one connection away. So, that's the first and foremost thing to you. So
mhm.
that, you're being respectful of the community, you're being respectful of the athlete, the location, all these sort of things like that. Because the last thing you want to do is put something out negative and therefore it's detrimental to the community. So, you're always doing things for the right reasons.
Mhm.
Even though it might be, you might be turning down money from like a cheap publication like your Daily Mail, those sort of things that, is trying to spin a, daredevil risk their life, those sort of classic articles.
Yeah.
Um,
Mhm.
everyone's seen them, everyone has them. So
Yeah, it
I
kind of
think,
gives like such a bad image for that type of sport because it is a risky sport, but people don't really see the background of the safety elements that goes behind it. It's actually very safe in a way
yeah,
as well. Yeah.
absolutely. It,
All right, cool. Let's move a little bit out of those areas and go into the gear. Let's talk a little bit about the gear that you use. What is the favorite gear that you use right now? What do you love the most about it? And yeah, if you have like a favorite lens, and why is your favorite lens? Camera body, and yeah, let's go from there.
So definitely at the moment, favorite camera body is R5. I do have like a strong tie to like a 14 mil lens as well. I just love how wide it is as well, without
Mm,
kind of like having that fisheye look, like that aspherical look. So I do love
yeah,
a 14 mil, and that like a prime is just amazing and tack sharp. But things definitely have evolved. Like when I first started, I was using, like your 5Ds, so kind of like a heavy body.
yeah,
But then with kind of the invention of mirrorless, things have just become so much easier, especially in the adventure world, because you're packing your gear as light as possible, and whether that be with lenses or bodies, you want to make things as light and as efficient as possible. So I'm always taking, whether that be like or like a 15 to 35 kind of mil lens. 7200 is always nice, especially like the RF one at the moment, which is super lightweight and small and compact. So
beautiful
good, hey?
lens. Yeah.
And you can fit that all in like a big camera backpack with all the rest of your gear that might be for a 2 week project. So you're
Mm,
not wasting too much space either.
perfect. You do some drone as well. Do you play with drones as well? I assume
um
not so
I I,
much.
I don't want to offend anyone.
Yep.
Generally with stills work, I'm like a firm believer in, if I can get myself in a position, then I'm going to do that over a drone. And I that comes back to my process. So whether that be, wrapping into an area like down a cliff or anything like that, then I'll do that over getting a drone. But
Mm,
as the world kind of changes and video is really important to clients as well, drone is kind of inevitable in some circumstances to get
yep.
those angles. So I will take like a Mavic Pro, those sort of things like that with me as well.
All right, perfect. I think for what you do, it's pretty hard to use any sort of lighting, but have you ever played with lighting before? Because I do know that you have some night shots as well, and I assume that those need some sort of illumination. So have you played with lights? How are you using artificial light?
Yep. So I don't use a huge amount of it. I just love the look of natural lighting as well. But I have really gotten into playing with like your speed lights and everything like that. Like some circumstances, it's inevitable that you have to use it,
Mm-hmm.
if it is dark and those sort of things. But also, like, I'm a big fan of using, athletes have head torches as well. So if you can get these extra bits of like fill lighting and stuff like that that make it look half natural, then I think it's quite clever and effective as well.
Mm.
But yeah, I'll always take a speed light with me as well, just in case. You never
Mm-hmm.
know what's going to pop up.
Yep.
But yeah, percentage of when I use it is probably 1 or 2%, if that. So yeah.
And in relation to gear still, apart from the camera and the lenses and the speed light that you take, is there anything else that you find that is essential for the type of work you do that you always bring with you?
Fast and big SD cards. Massive one, because the thing is though, like you just never know how long the project's going to end up being as well. So like you just don't want to run out of room and be like, oh, you don't want to be on a shoot culling photos. So to have enough room, like I'll always take quite a few backup SD cards as well, like 128 gig cards as well. At 300 megabytes per second is kind of what I normally aim for. Yeah.
Yeah, fast is like exactly adventure in sports, right?
Yep.
It has to be fast.
Yep.
And in relation to settings on your camera, I know nature can be very unpredictable, and I'm pretty sure that changed a lot. But what kind of settings is your favorite settings? Do you shoot always manual, or sometimes you do aperture priority or shutter priority? What is your go-to settings for the camera?
Yep. It's rare that I'll do aperture priority, even though it's really effective, especially when it is a high stakes environment as well, because you don't want to have to think about an extra thing. But in terms of manual, I'm always I'm trying to think what like the majority of my photos are really shot at. Like I think something like 1/500th of a second is always really effective for what I'm doing. I think, like if I can get up to 1,000th of a second, I think that's really, really nice. But 1/500th of a second is really, really effective for me. And I just love the look of it as well. I feel around 5.6 aperture is always really, really nice as well. Because you've kind of got that balance between with your depth of field as well. So I think between those and keeping my ISO as low as possible, I think that's always good. But sometimes you're just shooting an environment where all of those settings get chucked out the window and you have to start from scratch.
Yeah. Try the trial and error of photography, I guess.
Absolutely.
I think every genre of photography has that trial and error area that we have to do. Yep, awesome. Let me see here. It's some questions from the audience. Let's see if there's something really cool that we can talk about. Probably the travel one. Yeah, this. So how do you deal with the constant traveling and homesickness? Because most of the jobs that you have to do is always outside of home. They're always somewhere else. So you probably very often when you're in those projects, you probably spend quite a bit away, right? So how do you deal with the traveling? Like how do you pack? And how do you organize all your things to go through airports and on and on and on?
That's a really, really good question. And it's a very big question as well. Because I feel every time I go on a trip and like a project, I just refine how I go about things. So before I leave, typically on a project overseas, I'll write a list of all the gear, every piece of clothing, whether that be from like sleeping bags, mats, everything like that, to down jackets, to harnesses, carabiners, everything is labeled. And then when I'm coming home, I'll refine that and say, what did I use? What didn't I? So you're always refining that. There's obviously some projects, whether that be a winter one, where you'll need to change it up slightly. But yeah, typically I have a set list every time I go overseas and on a project that I know is going to be work, and everything on that list is effective and not taking up extra room that I don't need. So, and I feel like you also just develop, your carry on as well, that you know exactly what's in the bag, what you're going to have to take out to get checked, things you can't leave unchecked on, like your batteries and everything like that.
Yep.
So yeah, you just have it dialed in. It's second nature by the end of things. So I feel like by the end of a project, you've just got it down pat. There's no thinking about it. You're just doing it every time, because sometimes on these trips you're going through 20, 30 airports. So it's just
Yeah, I was gonna ask you, like, because I guess in the beginning, probably because of the experience is less. Did you had any bad experience on the traveling side of it that you're like, oh man, how come I forgot this, or something like that?
How long have you got?
Just give
um,
give us one, give us one story.
probably the worst one that I had was on my first serious trip overseas. Um, I thought, I need to pack as light as possible. So me just coming from Australia where it's quite warm generally, I packed a really light weight sleeping bag. I'd asked my brother, I was like, oh, what's the best one to bring? He's like, oh, I've got this really light one. I was like, oh, great. This is perfect for what I'll be doing. And I brought over a summer sleeping bag. And literally, I think every night that trip, I I had close to, I think, two or three jumpers on
Oh my
just to
God.
stay warm. So it was like absolute disaster, like absolute disaster. I think like I never made that mistake again, but it was a long trip just
Yeah,
with
I
that
can
summer
imagine.
one. So yeah.
Hard to sleep, like fall asleep, actually fall asleep. That must be
Oh,
like very challenging.
arms
Yeah.
crossed, like under armpits, like trying to stay warm.
Awesome, awesome. And I guess the trip is also a very strong part of the planning for your shoot as well. I think the whole process of like what I'm gonna take to the trip plays a big role on how you plan your shootings, right? Because you know the location beforehand, and you know more so how the weather is like over there, right? What else do you do in terms of like planning your shoot before the trip? So what goes through your mind there?
So this is another situation where things have changed because when I first went overseas, it was literally like nothing was set in stone, nothing was planned. So when you when you heard about a project or anything like that, you've literally got whether that be a day or so to plan for that whole trip. So
Wow.
you might have to repack your bags or anything like that. Then you're thinking about who's on the project, what they're going to look like on the line, what style have they got, what are the conditions going to be, what's the location, like how's the weather. So you think about all these different things, and there's some locations where there's very little information you have on it in terms of how you're going to shoot it because there might be one picture on Google and you go, okay, well, what's it going to be like for me to shoot on the ground? Do I need ropes? Do I need like a harness? Do I need a gree? Do I need all these things?
Mm.
What lens do I need? All these things come to mind. So there's quite a few locations where you literally get to the spot and it comes to you very quickly over time, but you go, oh, this is what I need now, but it's on the spot. It's not pre-planned or
Yeah.
anything because you don't have any other choice. So yeah.
I was gonna say because I guess like many places are very isolated from everyone else, right? And like to the normal world, it's pure nature.
Yep.
So you can see a photo, but then it's not the same as being there. And when you get there and you have all of the setup done, like the high line is set, you already know what they're gonna do. Uh, do you position yourself in one place and then you go, all right, I will shoot from here, here, here. I will need to upsail to get this shot from this angle. And when you have all of that done in your mind, how do you go? Do you have a team? Because I assume that all of those projects, there will be a fair few people around. And
Yep.
you just say, look, I want to get this. We need to set up that. So how is that process there?
So sorry.
Yep, go for it.
um, it's an interesting one because like when you do arrive at a location, you will have your mind scrambling for ideas and hey, this location, this angle is going to look perfect. I need to get down. I need to have this lens on. You know, I need I need to then run to this location because at this stage they'll be 50 meters from the anchor point. That's going to look the best. I can't be where I am previously. So all these things can can come to mind, and sometimes on a walk, depending how long the line is as well, because someone might be walking a 200-meter line, and you go,
Mm-hmm.
but I've got 5 angles to cover in the time that they're walking across, and that's pretty much running in between. But then you might have a location where literally it's 3 kilometers along the high line, so you're thinking, how am I going to do this line justice? Because longer than
It's
500 meters,
massive.
yeah, looks all the same, and a key part is perspective. So you want the person to be, to look like a highliner on the line, and to have them
Mm-hmm.
perspective with the landscape as well. You don't want a little dot that makes no sense to anyone, and it's not going to look good. So you're thinking all these things through. But also, what's unique in my situation is it's not organizing a photo with the athlete. It's them on the line, and they're having confidence in me, or the sponsors having confidence that I'm going to nail that shot. It's not pre-planned. It's, if things work out, amazing. It looks great, but if it doesn't, then egg on my face and I have to try again. I need to try harder. So a lot of the time you will have these teams, and they
Mm-hmm.
might be 5 people, they might be 15 people. Generally for high stakes projects, they're quite tight knit groups. You won't just
Mm-hmm.
have people standing around, but everyone's got a role in that project, and yours is to take photos. So you need to nail that opportunity that you get. So, it's great when it works, but when it doesn't, it can be brutal as well, because you feel horrible. You feel like you've missed out on everything, but you need to pick yourself up and try again. If you do get another opportunity, if it's a world record, you don't. So
You
yeah,
don't, yeah. It's like the shot. But I guess it comes down to that storytelling of the photography, right? Like the guy is in his element, and you focus on getting him in his element, right? I guess that's the main thing in your head, I assume.
absolutely.
Awesome. And in relation to after that, so you got the shot, you're pretty happy with the shot. Now you're gonna edit the shot. What post-processing tools do you use? What do you look for when you're editing? What is your favorite things to tweak in the photos when you're editing them? And yeah, tell us a little bit about that post-process.
Yeah. So generally when I'm shooting, it's kind of been refined through coming through press photography. That's literally, I'm trying to nail that shot first time, and then in post you're typically doing your basic crop, maybe a white balance check, just making sure everything's obviously correct, and then you might be doing your basic exposures, like your basic exposure. So generally, it's rare that I have to crop in post. I'm normally
Mm-hmm.
in a vast landscape where I don't want to crop. I almost want more,
Yep.
but even with a 14 mil or something like that. But yeah, generally when I step into editing, it's not a lot. I typically use Lightroom just because I
Mm-hmm.
can catalog all my photos. I know the location. I know what's worked, what hasn't. But yeah, typically it's a basic crop if I have to do anything, and then I'll tweak my white balance. Not a lot. If I'm out on the shoot, then I'll have to tweak it a bit more. But yeah, generally it's just like you might be doing like 0.2, 0.3, like with your exposure. It's not a whole lot, in all
Okay.
honesty.
And
Maybe a little bit of contrast.
in relation to the workflow, let's say, because yeah, as you said, you take lots of lots of cards, lots of memory,
Yeah.
so you take lots of photos. Walk us through a little bit of the workflow. Like you grab your coffee or you grab tea. I don't know what drinks you like. You sit down in the computer and then you go, all right, 1,500 photos just look through, or you already have pre-selected them while you're shooting, like you rate them before you like while you're actually shooting them, or you go and all right, 1,500 photos, I know that in this period here there is a few, so you go there and you rate them. How is that workflow process?
Yeah. So if I've got a cafe, or I've got a little break in between work or something like that, projects, then a coffee is amazing. It's a nice luxury. A lot of the time, it's, yeah, it might be like a Marseille tea, or it might be something like on the shoot that's kind of nice, but still don't have a coffee. But I think in terms of workflow, generally I'll have a really good idea in my mind about the shots that worked and the shots that didn't. So I'll know straight away as soon as I plug in that SD card to my laptop, which might be like a week or two later,
Okay.
depending on the project. Like for
Mhm.
instance, when we went to Patagonia, we were in there for 2 weeks. So you're like, well, I can scroll through my camera, but like I can't actually edit these, or I can't, do a mass cull, because who wants to do that?
And you're at Patagonia. Yeah, there's a lot to see there. Right?
Absolutely. So, and also the thing is though, like in an environment like that, as well as you don't want to waste battery, you don't want to do anything that's unnecessary. So typically when I do step back to my laptop, I'm plugging in my SD card. Obviously you're doing about 2 backups just in case. You don't want to you don't want to have that situation. But you're doing 2 backups. You're putting your photos into Lightroom. I would normally do about 3 or 4 culls. I'll do like 5, then colored as well, which really helps me. I don't want to think too much about it, so I can just get straight through it, and it's easy. So typically I'll put everything through, and then I'll get photos down to probably around 40 photos, and that I'm really happy with, and then I'll have like 3 standouts that I just know I nailed if I did. Yeah.
Yeah. Fair enough. Awesome. And in relation to like, how would you describe your style of photography, apart from being adventure and doing mostly highline? I know that you do other sports as well, but being highline your main focus, how would you describe your style in relation to color or in relation to movement? Yeah, how do you describe it?
I reckon just like vibrant landscape. Like I think if you take the person out, it's just like landscape photography. So I don't think about it as like an adventure sport or anything like that. I'm thinking about it as landscape photography. So I'm trying to compose it like that, and then that person in the sky or wherever they are is just a bonus. So I think the more vibrant the landscape, the better it is, and it gives me more to play with. As a contrast to the athlete, which is really, really nice. But yeah, I don't see myself as an extreme or adventure photographer, like, and that's my style, because it's not your typical sort of thing. It's quite different. So I think more as a landscape photographer, if anything.
Yeah, that kind of brings up the next question that I was going to say, which was in relation to the composition, your approach to the composition. So your approach is actually more landscape, and then adding the elements of the athletes over there in that vast landscape, right? I guess.
Yeah, I think for me, because if I work in reverse and I go, oh, there's the athlete, and then I'll try and make them fit in, like I'll make the landscape adjust, it doesn't work. But if you're going to these amazing locations all around the world, and you want to complement the landscape. So you're almost like, well, you work backwards and strip it away, and you go, what's this going to look like as a landscape image? And then what's going to complement this in terms of where the person's going to be positioned, where their hand's going to be, where their legs, who's on the line, these sort of things. So at the end of the day, you just want it to complement what's already beautiful and what's already there.
All right. Since we were talking about this landscape and what is beautiful and all of the images, let's bring some of those images in and let's talk about them. Let's talk about how you got them, why you like them, and so on and so forth. Let me just pop in here. Should be. All right. Let's see if I can open it. You guys can see this? Yep. Awesome. All right, let's talk a little bit about this image here. Is that your National Geographic one, right?
Yes. So that's actually my first National Geographic image. There's quite a bit.
Sorry, I think we ran through a technical problem here. I'm just checking if people can actually see it. Sorry, Aidan.
No, you're right.
All right, I'll have to stop sharing and reshare my screen here. Good. Awesome. All right. Yeah, go for it, man.
Yeah. So this one's actually my first National Geographic image. So it's got quite a long story to it, but so this is probably about a month into my first trip overseas as a photographer, and all I wanted to do was be with the biggest name athletes and get myself onto these really, really cool projects. So this is in Zakynthos, Greece, and I wasn't originally the chosen photographer for it. So
Oh.
yeah, I was working for a brand called Slacktivity who produce webbing and gear, and they had chosen this photographer and on this project where they hoped they would break a world record for blind walking, which is pretty much just like having a blindfold over your face and walking the line without falling. So I wasn't the chosen photographer, and then a couple of days before they were leaving for Zakynthos, this photographer pulled out, which he probably regrets now. But
For sure.
this was yeah. So this was my first big opportunity on a project, like on a world record project. So all I wanted to do was prove that I was the man, I was the guy that needed to be chosen on these projects. And like it's one of my biggest regrets to this day that I was so stressed and so anxious that I wanted to do a good job that I didn't actually enjoy the project. I was so stressed about getting these photos to the sponsor, getting them published, all these things that I wasn't soaking up that I was with these amazing athletes and they were having a ball, but I just didn't. I was working till midnight, on like a really terrible Wi-Fi where it was like, I think it was 2 megabytes per second or something like that. Like it was awful.
Oh my God.
And yeah, I just didn't enjoy it. And it took like one of the athletes, Sam, who's on the line, he got the blind world record, to pull me aside and say, man, just don't think about work. You're here, you're part of the team, just enjoy it. And I kind of had this reality check where I was like, oh, like, what am I doing? So I pretty much like had to just change my whole mindset, because I was just overcomplicating everything, from journaling ideas about the location, sprinting everywhere, like just stressing the rest of the team out pretty much like that, to actually going, oh, okay, like this is what it should be. So
And did you actually got this shot before the pep talk that he gave you, or after?
This was before the pep talk. I was actually showing him this photo, and he just said, man, like, stop. Like, he actually closed my laptop and he just said, no, like, don't. Like, you're pretty much, what you're doing is being counterproductive to everyone else. And I just was so eager, and I was young. I wanted to prove to everyone that I was the guy and I could do it. But yeah, I think it was counterproductive. But at the time, what else would you do? You have an amazing opportunity, like.
Yeah, and it was your first time as well, so it's kind
Exactly.
of normal to be nervous. A quick question, because you said that the photographer pulled out. So you traveled there because you just wanted to be there with these guys and shoot, like have a chance to shoot, or what was the deal that you were actually there and then you end up being called when he pulled out?
Yeah. So pretty much as soon as he pulled out, I was just nagging Sam, who's on the line here. I was just nagging him, please, like, you got to let me come. Like, and he said, well, we've got an opportunity as a photographer. You can come. So at the time, it wasn't paid or anything like that to be on the project. It was going to be, but what was firmly in my mind was, this is the sort of project where you set yourself up. You go, I've done that project. This is what I can do. And it's a proving ground, and it's investment as well. So, I bought my own ticket to get to this location, but then what it led to obviously was a lot greater than that. So,
it's an investment.
Absolutely. And it's, it's not glamorous or anything like that, but, when you do look back in these sort of things in hindsight, you think it was a no-brainer. you know, I paid for my airfare to get there, but as soon as you get an image in Nat Geo and, you know, you win awards with an image, you go, oh, I'll do this over and over again. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. Anything else you'd like to say about this photo in relation to positioning, or anything in particular that this photo has on your heart, apart from being the first and the one that kind of probably helped you shoot through that career?
Yeah, so I think there's a couple of things with this image that obviously you can see. This is like, it's a 580 meter high line.
Mm-hmm.
So he's, you know, you have to think logistically how you're going to capture this as well and what's going to be best, because, you know, you're moving with him as well. So you're moving from the far anchor point to where you are. So you can see it go down in the little hollow there and then back up. So you're having to cover all that ground while he's on the high line. So, you know, I had outlined this picture in my mind, what it was going to look like to capture everything and give it that perspective, because you've got 200-meter cliffs that you're on. So
Yes.
I had this, I had this image all imprinted in my mind and drawn out in diaries, and you know, you're just trying to almost nurture it and just find the exact positioning where you're going to be and how to get that positioning. And then, say with this image, for the last 30 meters before that point, you're just waiting for him to get into that position, and then he's going to have the arms in those correct positions as well.
In relation to that, like, because it's a pretty long walk, but also the distance between the point of start and the point of end is quite far away. Do you have to choose, always have to choose a side to shoot, or you find a way to actually move around from start point to end point?
So it depends on the location, because if something isn't accessible, then it makes it very hard. And some locations you're doing so much work to get to that anchor point that, you know, to almost sprint to the next anchor point, it's just impossible. So typically, say with this location, and typically with some of the bigger lines, you can make it work, because you know, they will be taking their time and they'll be walking. Yes, it means you need to move a bit faster, but you can cover that distance, so that's okay. But you will get athletes that will cover the line, and they're almost sprinting across the line, which is crazy to think about. So yeah. So those athletes you have no chance with, but there's athletes where they will be taking their time, so you do have a little bit more latitude. So yeah.
So that's where it comes down to kind of knowing the athlete as well and their personality, because I guess some will like to go slow and some will like to go fast, I guess.
Absolutely. Like, there's some athletes where, you know, whether it be on a 2-kilometer line, you know, they might take an hour and a half on the line, and you go, great, I can cover all these positions, even though 2 kilometers is a long way. But then you have people that can cover that line in like 40 minutes, 50 minutes, and you're going, no way. So yeah.
It's like you wouldn't be able to cross even running in, like, go around it. Awesome. Do you want to go into another photo, or you want to talk a little bit about this one?
Yeah, I can also talk about how I found out that it was published in Nat Geo, which is it's a really odd one.
Yeah, let's do it.
So like, after this project, I pretty much just put this out to everyone that I could, because it was a new project, and you know, it was a world record at the time, and I'd just been pushing this to everyone, and you know, about 2 months later, I'd just finished up a project in Patagonia. I'd hiked out. I was like, had blisters, burns all over my feet. I was knackered. I was just about to come home. I just, you know, I wasn't thinking about anything to do with work. I was just like, get me out of here. And a friend just said to me, congratulations. I said, oh, what? Like, what do you mean? Like, I've just gone back to Wi-Fi, mate. Like, what? And he said, no, congrats. You got the cover in Greece. And I said, sorry, what? And he goes, yeah, your images on Nat Geo Greece cover. And I said, what? like, I'm a big believer that things work out for the best. And yeah, after that brutal stuff, it did work out for the best. And because I never expected Nat Geo to get back to me. So yeah, and publish it. So
That's amazing. That's amazing, man. Congratulations again for the photo.
thank you.
It's an amazing photo. And yeah, awesome. Let's probably jump into another one real quick. Where is it? Ta-da. So, Eiffel Tower. Can you guys see it? Oh, I will have to reshare it. Da-da-da. Boom, there we go. Wow, that's sick. Before you start talking about this one, I will bring up one thing in relation to your work. Who do you have people in your life that influence the work that you do? What is your inspirations? What other artists or photographers inspire you to get the shots that you get?
So there's a couple that have really like, and I'll go to photographers first, and then like influential people as well. But I think from a photography point of view, the first person that really like inspired me, and I just took a real notice of was Steve McCurry, when with his Nat Geo cover like of Afghan Girl. I just before that I really had no interest in Nat Geo. I was kind of just like, what is this? It's a history thing. And yeah, I just fell in love with his work, and he's traveling as well. And then I started to find adventure photographers like Crystal Wright as well, which is an Australian adventure photographer. And then of course I know
that was the one from Tasmania, right? That you said.
yeah
I remember,
yeah
yeah.
So like really amazing photographer, and done a lot of traveling, works a lot with like rock climbers and base jumpers as well. But I think like the biggest one recently as well, like over the last couple of years, is Jimmy Chin, of course.
Yeah,
So
that guy is amazing.
he's incredible, and like the fact that he gets himself onto these projects and into these positions, and he does all the badass climbing as well. So yeah, I have a huge amount of respect and admiration for those sort of people, and him. So yeah, I think those three as well. But there's been a couple of people that have really helped me as well along the way. And of course, like my parents and brother and everything like that. But I think without, say, my art teacher, like that, there was a photography teacher as well, and then without her, I probably wouldn't have pushed it as far as I did. But then without my teacher at TAFE as well, Adam Knott, I probably wouldn't have gone into like that press side of things and gotten the contacts. And he was always the one that's staying after class to look through my terrible images. But those sort of people that they it may be a small thing, but it's a big thing as well for you, and they play a huge role. So yeah, I think very thankful for those sort of people.
Awesome. All right, let's dig into this amazing photo and talk a little bit about it.
Yes.
What kind of project was that, and how hard it is to get permission to kind of cross the Eiffel Tower like that? Because I guess it's like also pretty hard to get the government to let you do something like this.
Yeah, it's one of those projects where any other place in the world you'd never get permission for a monument. Like, it just wouldn't happen. But it kind of, this project, it came about where they had this thing in France called the Telethon, where it's like a national day to do amazing things around France, like in name of charity. So this crew called SDD, it's all French athletes. They got permission to do this line, and I'd kind of heard about this project. I had a few friends on the project, and I I just pushed and pushed, and I was like, well, you need a photographer. You need a photographer. Like like me. And,
Pick me.
you know, yeah. So eventually they kind of just went, oh, well, do you want to come? And I was like, yeah, yes, of course. So, I just took a train up from Grenoble in France and, met the team in Paris. And this was actually the first time I'd seen the Eiffel Tower. I'd never
Oh
seen
wow.
it prior. So it was pretty amazing. And, you know, that night when I first saw it, they actually closed off all the streets. So it was just the first time that I'd seen it. It was all to us. We rigged the
Amazing.
line, and no tourists, no one around. So it was pretty special. So, um, but this is like another example of how cutthroat things are as well,
Mm-hmm.
because this is I'm trying to think how long it exactly is. I think it's about 380 meters long, this line, but it's all for TV. So you've got one opportunity, and if he falls or or if you don't capture the photo, it didn't happen. That sort of mentality. So it's really cutthroat. So this is probably one of the projects where I've done the most research and the most planning, where I had pages upon pages about every angle, every position, maps, where I was going to shoot, settings, lengths of lens. So everything was planned out, that almost had it dialed in, that as soon as I got to the location, he was on the line, I was moving from A to B to C to D to E, just simultaneously, to get a certain shot where he was on that line. So it came second nature.
Awesome. So you guys, all of the planning you did was spot on. There was not much of a like, oops, that's not gonna happen today anymore. I will have to quickly change this, kind of thing.
Yeah. So I think the way that I typically work is I plan as much as I physically and mentally can for something, but then
Mm-hmm.
there's a component where there's things out of your control, and there's
Mm.
also like being in a position where you're like, well, I can't do any more. So with this location, I had planned upon everything. I had six, 7 shots, major shots that I had dialed in, but then you leave a little bit of room where hey, he's still got that last 10, 20 meters. What shot am I getting in that? And I can kind of be a bit creative about that. So I end up doing something a bit different, where there was pigeons around. So I thought, how amazing and how like kind of romantic that, you've got the
If they
Eiffel
flew.
Tower. Yeah, you've got these pigeons flying, this man that looks like he's flying through the sky. And yeah, so I end up just like running through, like scattering pigeons to get this shot. And it sounds crazy, but those things do turn out for the best.
Mhm.
So yeah, I think this is one of the projects where I'm really proud of the fact that I got myself there, I did the work, I did the preparation, no one can doubt that, and then you nailed those shots. So
Awesome, amazing. We will have to go through a little bit quicker, unfortunately, because
sorry.
we're running out of time with the photos. But I want to see if we can manage to finish those ones that you picked.
Yeah.
So let's move to the next one real quick here. Stop sharing. I have to. Oh yeah, I want to talk about this one a lot. All right. This shot here, maybe let me zoom in a bit because it's a bit small. There you go. Can you guys see this? Or this one
Yeah.
is in Nazareth, right?
Yeah. So this is in Nazaré, Portugal. So I'd first heard about this location through a group called the Western Riders, which are like a slacklining group. And I'd heard about the location. I heard that, this was one of the main locations that they highlined. And, I hadn't had an opportunity previously to get down here and, to shoot with them. But
Mm-hmm.
on the back of finishing the Eiffel Tower project, I got in contact with a couple of the guys, and I said, well, if I come down, will there be anything happening? And one of the guys said yes. So I just straight away booked a 24-hour night bus from Paris. And I said, I just need to get myself in this position, because this is going to be really special. This is going to be an amazing thing that no one has ever captured before and done it justice. So, I'd gone through the night bus process, got myself there. I'd even like camped outside the lighthouse, which is famous at this location.
Yep.
And so it's famous for big waves. They get up to about
Hmm.
30 meters in size at this location. And
Yeah.
when I first arrived, one of the guys said, "Oh, we can't do it today." And I said, "Why?" And he goes, "It's not big enough. It's only 7 meters." The waves, which in Australia is huge
It's
still.
huge. Yeah.
Yeah. So, there was photographers everywhere photographing big wave surfing. Eventually we did photograph this line, but I just had this photo in my mind that I hadn't done. Like, and I just thought there's something missing. I just need to make this work. I need to capture it. So, they were sticking around over Christmas, and I was meant to head to Scotland to see some of my family, and I actually cancelled seeing them because I thought I just need an extra week at this location to get this shot. There's going to be this wave that might be, a once in the day, once in a week sort of thing. It's going to fall in this certain way. This guy is going to be in this certain position, and I need to be in this angle to get it. So I'm just waiting, and eventually I got it. And it just, this moment of relief, like, okay, it's all worth it. It's all worth it. So
It's an epic image. I was gonna ask you, how the hell? Sorry about the language there, but how did they anchor that on that rock? Who went there? How did they get there?
so we go there at, I think it's going to be like high tide, and you get, when I think the waves are a bit, they're far smaller, and they get a jet ski to the back of it, and then they just
Hmm.
climb the rock. That's the benefits of knowing big wave surfers as well. They do
Yeah.
have jet skis,
Yeah.
so you do that, and then you need to scale back. So
Oh, it looks pretty intense. But I guess
it's
if the waves are smaller, it's not that wet, and then probably it's not that like extremely hard to climb it, I would say.
Yeah, there's definitely, like, when the waves aren't falling directly on the rock and they're a lot smaller, it's relatively easy to climb as well.
Hmm.
But yeah, as soon as they pick up, no way.
No way. Yeah. Awesome. What else? I saw that with this one, you have several posts of it, of like you can barely see him at some stages, right? Like the waves are crashing so hard that it engulfs the guy. Is it
Yeah,
correct?
yeah. So there's some moments where it goes over the like the far anchor point, which is like a pylon in the water, and it literally just consumes the person. It's just this white white blur, and then all of a sudden, the person might be on the other end of the line. Like, they just get pushed with such force. So
Wow.
it's brutal. And, I'll be honest that there's a lot of times where, to get the angles, you have to be at that anchor point. So you kind of develop this, you're shooting until the wave's just coming up to the person. You've got the shot, and then you have to turn. Otherwise, you're going to get hit by the wave. So, and your gear, of course, as well. So yeah, there's quite a lot of risk involved in it.
Hmm.
But yeah, you just need to get your timing right. So
Awesome. All right. Let's move quickly and swiftly. Let's go to the next one. Ta-da-da. The fireworks. All right. Boom. What about this?
this is a really, really special image to me. So this is actually in the middle of Zurich, in Switzerland. So there's a team, called Selectivity, and it's like all their pro athletes, pretty much like that. So they were doing these shows across the canals there and everything like that, in the middle of Zurich. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so there's a festival, and it's called Zurich Fest, where there's like average 2 million people that come to the city, see everything. There's food, there's, a lot of entertainment. And they were hired for these, to walk during the day, typically, across these canals. And they every night they'd have these huge fireworks shows. And I just, I was talking to one of the athletes, we were watching the fireworks, and I said, hey, like, what do you think about getting a shot? And she's like, no, like we probably can't, like we're not meant to, this isn't our time slot. I talked to one of the other guys. I said, oh, like get on the line. Like this is going to be worth it. And he goes, nah, like I'm too tired. Like, and this is one of the situations where he looks at the image now and goes, damn, I should have gone that line. But with about 5 minutes to go in this show, like this fireworks show, this athlete from the UK called Sarah Rixham, she heard the idea and she's like, I'm going to get out there. So without even like having time to kind of collaborate about where she was going to go or what she was going to do, she just got out on the line, and I had to sprint down through all these people, dodging people, going through restaurants to get to like the pier, and just hoping that she stood up and she got in the position. So, I was kind of out of breath and, just trying to figure out all the settings I had and making sure I was exposing it right. Like not enough time at all. And it wasn't planned, planned out properly. But eventually when she just got up and I had a few photos taken, I just thought, please, like, just be in focus. Just please, you've done everything you can. And fireworks show ended. I'd probably fired off, 6 frames before it ended. And it's one of those moments where I don't know whether you've done it, but I'm super attached and super emotional to my images, where I looked at the back of the screen, I started crying. I just thought, wow, this is something really, really special. You don't get these opportunities and you don't get these frames. So
not at all.
Yeah. It's one of those special things where, the shot is just the icing on the cake, really. To get that shot is the hard bit. So
amazing. We're really running out of time. I unfortunately don't think we'll be able to go through all of the photos. And there is one last question that I want to ask, which is, what is your goal for next year as a photographer? I've heard that you're working on a project, and talk a little bit about it real quick before we close out.
Yep. So I've got 2 projects on the burn at the moment, and one is a world record. One of my good friends is attempting a world record on a unicycle, which is incredible. He's trying to ride 100 meters on a high line. It's hard enough walking at those heights, let alone on a unicycle, which is just crazy, even for me to say. But when he does that, it'll be incredible. And also at the moment, I've been working on a documentary for the last 2 years. So I've gotten into the video side of things, and I've been working on an Olympic documentary with slalom athlete Jessica Fox. So that will be coming out later this year, and that's a massive passion project where I put my heart and soul into it, and I think it's going to really show something different, And I hope everyone watches it, and the feedback would be incredible. But I think no one's going to see anything like it. So
amazing. We still have some time, I guess. Maybe we can talk a little bit about the facts that you moved. Oh no, actually, that's it. We're done. Thank you so much, Aidan, for your time and for sharing all of that experience with us. That was amazing. You're a very talented photographer, and I hope we keep seeing some of your work coming up, and maybe getting some more prizes as well, bring some more prizes home. And thank you so much for tonight, and we'll see you around. Just for the people that are watching, don't forget that our next On the Couch with Marilyn Morgan. She's a portrait photographer specialized in Aboriginal women and motherhood and culture. She will give us some really good insights into that aspect, into the Indigenous side of things, which is something very important for us to always keep in touch and have in mind. So stay tuned for Marilyn Morgan next. Thank you. Have a good night.